Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week. So in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured. I also do have a Kickstarter going on right now for Father Like Daughter. It's about a high school girl. Father left her to become a full-time superhero. Everyone in the world loves him except for her, and then she inherits his abilities. This is the full origin story, so if you want to see exactly how Casey becomes a superhero, go check that one out. Now, let's jump into this week's books. We had 11 books, so pretty average-sized haul, and number 11 was a book I got on whim, which is Rise of the Power of X, issue 1. This is a second portion of this X-Men Fall of X arc that I didn't love the first issue of. I've been on and off with X-Men since Krakoa. It just hasn't really been for me for the most part, besides maybe Marauders I read pretty consistently. But this one is everything I'm not into for Krakoa. It's very convoluted, more about the mythos building, and I like the characters, and that's kind of what I liked about the first issue a little bit more, even though I didn't think a lot of things moved. It was more character driven. You had Cyclops, you had your Wolverines in there. This is more of your one-off characters, and again, more of the world building aspect. So it depends on what you like about Krakoa, and if you even like Krakoa, if you're gonna enjoy this, but it's not reinventing the wheel. It is not changing Krakoa forever, which I want a little bit more with our future of our X-Men. So giving that 2 stars. We'll see if I get the next issue. I'm still not sure of my journey for the X-Men. Moving on to number 10, which is another event-styled book, and that is Gang War Luke Cage, issue 3. I like this issue, but it's a little generic. Even some of the dialogue felt a little generic with Jessica Jones talking about cooking dinner. I'm like, would Jessica Jones say that? I'm not sure. A lot of it's just fighting, and then Luke Cage ends up in the Spider Slayer suit, which I like the ending. If you like this world, you want to see the expansion of Gang War, continue to read this. Some of you have to read. No, I don't think it's a powerful character story, which I want from a Luke Cage book. But I like the cast. I like the vibe of the book. So I'll continue to see where it goes. I think there's one more issue left of it, but it's mostly your stereotypical action book. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, speaking of Gang War Daredevil issue 3. They're almost one and the same for me because I do think the art is better here. I actually think the writing is also a little better here. But I like Luke Cage's gang a little bit more. I like the kind of balls to the wall action of that book. Here, it's slow. It's a lot of what you've already been getting in Daredevil, but I like the villain. I think the assassin villain with the Wolverine claws, wanting to kill Elektra could be an interesting point for this character. But there's not a lot of it here. There's a lot of mentions of it. There's maybe 1 or 2 pages of them fighting, but it's oh, here's what's to come. So I think this will be a stronger series overall, but I kind of had a little bit more fun with the Luke Cage book, even though I thought it was a weaker book. But they're both 3 stars. They're pretty much in the same level, again, for different reasons. Man, going through all the event books, because number 8 is Titans Beast World issue 4, which is actually a book I like. Honestly, there's just a lot of good books out this week. This is a point A to point B. We get to see the world react to these people becoming beasts and blaming Beast Boy, and the Titans being well, we don't want to blame our friend, but we also want to protect our friend, and we understand this stuff is happening because of him, so what do we do? It's a bit of a conundrum there. A lot of action in this issue, beautiful art, but not a lot of movement. I do think this is a little bit of a weaker issue compared to the other 3, which I think balance the action and story a little bit better. So giving that 3.5 stars, and then it's number 8. Moving on to number 7. This is a little lower for me, but again, it just was a good week, and that is Green Lantern issue 7. This is more of an exposition issue of what happened before this series. Why is Hal on Earth? And what happened to Kilowog? Why is Sinestro the way he is? And they answer all those questions. That's what this issue is. The artwork is not as strong as the previous issues, but not bad either. I think the facial expressions are still strong. I just think there's something a little off with the coloring. Maybe it was a little bit too bright for me, which is weird because usually I'm it's too dark, but there's too much brightness here. But, it was a solid issue. Again, I like learning about the Green Lanterns going to different sectors and being forced to go to different sectors. I love the mythos building. I very much enjoy the, again, something that feels very familiar, a familiar Green Lantern book, but not spinning its wheels. It's doing stuff that I haven't seen from Green Lantern. But I'm also I'm invested in this Earth side of the story. When they go to space, I get it. That's like the Green Lantern way, but I like when Hal's on Earth. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, and that's Sensational She-Hulk issue 4. I thought this was a really solid issue. There's times where, especially in the beginning, that's a little slow. Especially the King of Hearts stuff, Jack of Hearts. The romance, I'm not totally sold on, but I love when Jen is just interacting with her friends, especially Patsy, where we get to see a much bigger story from her, that her demons are literally coming back, and I love a good Patsy story. And just the chemistry between Jen, Patsy, and Carol is just a lot of fun here, and I think it's Rainbow at her best, and just playing a lot of great ping pong in this one. So yeah, I think the ending really saves this issue for me, and the art, as always, I think is pretty strong. I like this style. There's some times where I'm like, oh, I wish that Jen, as Jennifer, not She-Hulk, looked a little less sketchy, but I like the art overall. So giving this 4 stars, I actually thought it was a really solid issue. Moving on to number 5, which is Transformers issue 4. Surprised to see this a little lower. This is more of a point A to point B. The big moments were in the last issue when Spike, I think his name is, gets shot. And this is really the continuation of playing with the themes of our Transformers, looking at humanity and seeing making it delicate, right? And being like, okay, we have to save them. We have to also just see how beautiful everything is around us, even though we're these big clunky guys. And that's definitely played out through here, as, you know, obviously Spike is kind of fighting for his life. There's times where I'm a little confused with which Transformers who, as someone who doesn't know much about Transformers, but you could tell and I think this is what's great about the art, you could tell who the bad guy is with their facial expressions, where he's like, okay, he looks mean, he's probably the bad guy. But they all just look like robots to me, so I'm like, is that the main guy? Is that the villain? But I actually think the art does a good job at telling us who the villain and good guy is, even if you're not a Transformers expert. And then we also get to see Carly realize her feelings with her parents' death. And there's some good moments that we've been waiting for. Not a lot of shocking moments, but you don't need that. You know, with an issue that, you know, there's been a lot of big issues. You want to kind of settle the pieces a little bit. That way, when you get to your bigger moments again, you're like, wow, I got some room to breathe. So overall, giving this 4 stars. It's a phenomenal book, and I'm continuing to really love it. Moving on to number 4, which is Action Comics issues 1061. This is Jason Aaron joining for the arc, and I liked it, you know, and I think mostly because the artwork was really strong for this one. Bright, vibrant, good action. But I'm not even a big Bizarro fan, but I like that it re-engineered what Bizarro is and utilized some really interesting concepts of Superman that we all know and love, that he's weak to magic, and then doing something different with it. You know, in the end, we can see all these other people in Metropolis become like these Bizarro forms. So it does what an issue 1, we'll call it an issue 1, has to do. It gives you some good action. It gives you interesting plot, some good character moments between Superman and Bizarro, and a good cliffhanger, which I always like from a good comic book. So it kind of has everything. Now, is this to my personal preference? I don't know. I don't think this makes me a Bizarro fan, but I can recognize this is a really, really solid story, and I had a good time reading it. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Batman and Robin issue 5. The artwork did change for this one. I kind of liked seeing something different because the other artist is so stylized, so it's kind of nice to kind of literally take off filters and just tell kind of a more plainer story. And there's parts that are a little slower here, but the highs are really high, and it reminds me of why I loved Robin so much. I love the school moments where Damian is trying to figure out the mission, right, but also figuring out how to be a kid. There's times where I feel like Bruce is a little out of character, but I'm also kind of writing it off as like Bruce is trying to play the role of Bruce. So I was like, all right, that's okay. But the things I really loved is him joining the soccer team, and his menace to actually being tied to Batman. And so many classic like teen hero moments that just really work here, but also doesn't feel repetitive. You know, that girl who shows up, I was like, oh, all right, she's going to be the love interest. And she doesn't. She's not that here. Here is just a classic villain. Then you have some interesting twists along the way. And of course, having his previous mentor as a hero, as a teacher is interesting as well. So there's just a lot of things to pull off of where you're like, wow, they're building a really interesting foundation for hopefully an even bigger and better book. But I'll continue to say I think this is a better Robin book than it is a Batman book. I don't think we actually need Batman. I just really enjoy Damian's story. So giving this 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, much to my personal preference, and as Spider-Gwen Smash issue 2. I love Spider-Gwen, and I think for a while they didn't know what to do with the character. They would make her a clone, or honestly, I forgot every other premise they've done with her in the past couple of miniseries. But the last one was the clone thing, where it's like, oh, they're just kind of spinning their wheels because they want a Spider-Gwen book, but then nothing's actually happening to the character. And it embraces everything that was great about that original Spider-Gwen story, and it's trying to expand the Earth 65 universe with Pixie showing up and a version of Hulk, we'll call it, because Rick Jones is there. All while we kind of have this fun dynamic between Dazzler and Gwen, but also the personal dynamic between Gwen and her band. It really just kind of has everything I love. The music, the superhero moments, the world building, and it's just a really solid series. And if you've missed old Spider-Gwen, this is exactly what this is, which is why it's so high up for me. And I think issue 2 was honestly a great follow-up to that issue 1. So giving that 4 stars, and then it's number 2. Alright guys, it's the title of the video. It's a book we've all been really excited for. And that's Ultimate Spider-Man issue 1. Was it worth the hype? I'm guessing it was, if it's my number 1 pick. I didn't know what to expect with this book, right? I think when I went into it, I knew it was an older Peter, I knew he had kids, and I knew he was married to Mary Jane. But I thought he was just gonna be Spider-Man. I was like, all right, cool, he's gonna be Spider-Man. It's everything everyone wanted, but it does the Ultimate Universe thing in a really different way without copying what the old Ultimate Universe was. It's the beginning of Spider-Man, but instead of making a teenage story that we've seen a billion times, he's an adult being Spider-Man for the first time. I'm like, wow, that's cool. And I love his dynamic between him and MJ, the trustingness of each other. I love that conversation. It almost felt like a coming out conversation. I was like, where is this going? And I love kind of the play on that. And MJ's like, I trust you. Like, do what you gotta do. And then you're opening up the world even further when he gets that vial. And obviously the big elephant in the room, Uncle Ben's still alive, but Aunt May died. I was like, oh, maybe she died of cancer. Maybe she died just old age. And it's like, no, there was actually an event that happened. Like, oh, that really ties into the idea of how Uncle Ben died. He died before his time. And he died of a violent event. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. They'll probably play with that too. And there's so much here because you obviously have the kids. But yeah, it's not genetic that they could be spider people either. So it's like, oh, are they going to become spider people? Who else is in the supporting cast? J. Jonah Jameson's actually a nice guy, kind of. Maybe he wants to be partners with Ben, and it's just like, oh, and you have the story of the Daily Bugle too. There's so many layers in this first issue, but it's all character driven, and that's something that felt in a way it didn't really feel like any other Hickman book. It felt very different. It was world building, but the characters were weaved in just the same amount, and I really like this book a lot. I think I'm a little torn that we didn't get to see Spider-Man in this first issue, but I also think that's what's great about this book. So I really enjoyed it. I want to say it was everything I expected, but I think what's so great about it is it was nothing what I expected, because it actually did something that no one would expect. It did something different and felt fresh, and it reignited what was so great about the Ultimate Universe, again, without copying what that original Ultimate Universe was. I really think it was the best way to do this issue. Yes, it's worth the hype. Go pick it out. I give that 4.5 stars, and that is my pick of the week. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite books of the week were. And last week's pick of the week was Pine and Merrimack, issue 1. And here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.